A blessed morning to all of you. I continue this series of Poverty of Nations, and of course, Brian has aptly reminded us through our song that poverty is one of the probably worst things that has happened to us. And since this is actually lesson 5, we're actually in that point where we'll look at the moral advantages of the free market system, which we have examined a few months back. And of course, this particular Sunday school lesson is based on the book by theologian Wayne Grudem, and he paired with an economist, Barry Azimuth. And of course, I have constantly said that I have picked this topic because I'm truly appalled of the poverty that our nation experiences. And of course, not only our nation, but many other nations around the globe. And this does not exempt even the prosperous nations. We see even in the US of A, homeless people, and poverty is really practically everywhere. Of course, just to remind us, this is the poverty rate that we have in the Philippines as of 2021. We still have very high poverty rates. Among families, it's 13.2%, and among population, it's a little below 20%. And of course, this was during the pandemic, and this could have been exacerbated by that particular epidemic. And of course, myself and Brother Rex going up to the many uplands, we are also appalled that there's so many Filipinos in our uplands that are experiencing so much poverty. And just a quick review of the previous lessons. This topic is of national focus. We're not talking about individual poorness. So we're talking about how a nation could get out of poverty. And definitely, when we consider this, it's not a simple solution. And in fact, you may or you may not agree with what Wayne Grudem and Barry Azimuth have propounded in the book. And that would be a very interesting discussion. But of course, there's that reason, there's that very pointed question: why should we help the poor? And of course, our Lord Jesus Christ, the very scripture itself has commanded us to be of assistance to the poor. But of course, material prosperity is a secondary issue. I've time and again, whenever I'm handling this lesson, explained that this is not a health, wealth gospel that I'm sharing with you. More importantly, we're focusing on what God wants us to do, particularly with the poor. And as we have seen in the previous lesson, the goal of any nation who wants to get out of poverty is to increase production of goods and services. And I think last time we looked at wrong systems. There are quite a lot of them has been tested in several countries in previous years, and they don't just work. And a better solution proposed is the free market system, where, of course, we have emphasized that individuals have free choices. They have the freedom to choose in terms of what business they would be doing, and even having private ownership of the means of production, unlike in other countries. And just to summarize, so far what we have seen in terms of what this free market is all about, a prosperous nation has the following economic system. It has a free market economy. Of course, sometimes this is labeled as capitalist. We'll have a look at that closer in this particular lesson. But it's actually not strictly speaking capitalism, but there would be a lot of overlaps. But there's definitely what they term as bad capitalism. Also, the nation has widespread private ownership of property. We have already clarified that before. The government allows private ownership of many properties. Then the nation has an easy and quick process for people to gain documented, legally binding ownership of property. I think I've mentioned last time, and it was highlighted in the book, that in the Philippines, just to get a title for a property in an urban area, it takes around something like 168 steps and ranging from 13 to 25 years. And I'm just appalled and surprised that the authors was able to find that kind of information and put it in their book. Likewise, the nation maintains a stable currency because, as we know, if the currency keeps fluctuating, that means there's something wrong with the economy. And of course, there are some external forces, manipulations, but that's part of the global economy that we are experiencing now. And I think we also have seen that the nation has low tax rates because it's a disincentive to have very high tax rates. And of course, for many of us, the government included, is taxing us quite high. And then I think we have also emphasized this, and we'll be going back again to this International Index of Economic Freedom. And sadly to say that the Philippines is not improving in terms of the International Index of Economic Freedom. For this particular morning, what we'll be focusing would be really looking at what we have on top, the moral virtues. But just to give you a overall preview, the free market system, we need to discuss the moral virtues that it has as an advantage, the government that free market systems espouses, and the freedom that it enjoys. Likewise, the value, particularly the cultural values that the people in a free market system are practicing. So it's focusing on the moral virtues. Of course, just like what I've said, in fact, I was trying to look for some photos yesterday, and all I could see is photos of ibagsak ang mga kapitalista. And lest I be red tagged here, and baka maya-maya ay paglabas ko lang dyan ay hindi na ako makauwi sa Umali subdivision at iba ang tirahan ko. Hindi ko na nilagay yung picture. Because there are really so-called moral objections at maraming, there are many people complaining about it, but it has many moral advantages. And this is what we are trying to look at. We will be looking at in this particular lesson. But of course, we do not believe that free market system would make morally perfect people. In fact, just like what Brother Ike was telling us a while ago, we're sinful people and we need the righteousness of God. And definitely there will be sinful, evil people. And the bad news is they will continue to cheat. Companies would cheat, individual traders would cheat, they would lie, they would defraud you, etc. And just simply said, flawed human beings can never create a flawless system. But what we want to look at are the moral advantages of the free market system. And the wrong question to ask would be, do free market system still have some evil people in them? Of course. Marami yan. Hindi mauubos yan. You just go around us and look at even an ordinary store, ordinary company, and the answer would be staring right in front of you. But the right question that we would want to ask is that does a free market tend to discourage and punish wrong behavior and tend to encourage the reverse, and that is virtuous behavior, and does it do things better than other economic systems? So that's the right question to ask. Now, as far as the moral advantages of the system is concerned, there would be around 16 moral advantages ranging from personal freedom, personal virtues, interpersonal virtues, even societal virtues. But there are, of course, moral objections. So if you count them, 16 plus 5, that's 21. And if given my time, I don't think I could finish 21 items in a Sunday school lesson. So I'll be cutting this into half. The first one is the first moral advantage of free market system is that it promotes freedom of choice for moral action. And this actually is the concept of individual freedom. And freedom is something that each and every one of us cherish. And a free market system would be founded on upholding the freedom and rights of each individual. And it's not the government who is manipulating the people sort of as objects, where they would be the one to dictate what would be produced, particularly say in communist or socialist countries where they are given quotas for production. But the economic decision actually is directed by persuasion and even voluntary exchange rather than by coercion and force. And this is what this concept of individual freedom is concerned. Freedom, or rather free markets, thrive on non-aggression principle that protects this human freedom. And the moral and physical autonomy of people is protected from violent attack by others. Of course, if there would be violent attacks, just like what Haiti is experiencing us, where the gangs rule in the streets, we could not exercise this moral and physical autonomy of the people. And of course, the scripture is very clear as far as God honoring and protecting human freedom. From Genesis to Revelation, we can see this particular verses where even right at the start, Adam and Eve were given this freedom to choose. They were given the choice whether to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Genesis 2:7. And of course, we know that with that freedom, it costs us, the whole humankind, so much that, of course, it took the Lord Jesus Christ, as we have been reminded by Brother Ike, his righteousness, his imputed righteousness, to correct that which was very wrong. And of course, if we go down even up to Revelation, we can see this freedom being made clear. And this freedom of choice is very important in building virtues of any nation. And that's why it's very important that this is maintained. And yeah, that's what I was saying. Let's go now to the second point. Still freedom, but it's freedom for abstract and spiritual pursuits. In many other countries, if where production is key, freedom to pursue lives of, say, personal contemplation or prayer, ministry to others, or artistic creativity is something that is frowned upon. And in fact, even in other countries, it's even punished. It's just like thinking, say, for example, in many communist countries, pastors would be banned because they don't produce. They're just preaching, and they would say, why do you have to preach? You have to work in the factory. Or I know that there are lots of our very artistic brethren here. You're not producing any product. Why have that? Why have that logo, or why have that sculpture or that painting? You don't have to be artistic. But there are those people who have this kind of inclination because that's the talent given to them. But if people will not be allowed to exercise that kind of freedom, that's not good. But free market allows that. There is this particular explanation by Robert Sirico, and he was telling us about how material and non-material pursuits are interconnected. So yung material at non-material, so yung abstract at saka yung maybe spiritual with the material. And he was describing there that private property demonstrates the interpretation between our physical bodies and our capacity for transcendence. We engage nature with labor that our reason plans and directs. So it's our reason. When we think of something, we plan it and we want to execute it and produce something that did not previously exist. Of course, there was that statement about beaver constructing their own dams in the same way for many years. Or, for example, we know that the birds, and I think I did use this illustration before, have been for thousands of years been building their nests as they are. But try to think of man. Of course, I don't believe and I don't know yung anthropologist ang tatanungin ko if sa kuweba nga ba tayo unang talagang tumira, Madam Anthropologist, ano? But now, of course, we know that we live in different kinds of houses. There are this majestic, I have to look at the Chartres Cathedral in France, and it's so majestic. It's a work of art in terms of Gothic architecture. Of course, Mona Lisa, electric bulb, its invention, and of course, if you look at your smartphones, computers, and of course, there's that revolution in agriculture. I thought of the many scientists in our midst. We know that Brother Glenn has genetic engineered a rice that would be very nutritious. And sasabihin nyo ba, knowledge product lang naman yan, hindi ka pwede, doon ka sa factory, magtrabaho ka. That's not allowed in areas where there's no free market. But with a free market, these thoughts of individuals that they have the resources, they want to execute that kind of plan, maybe that kind of company or that kind of product, they have that freedom in a free market. And therefore, what we want really is to see the right to property is wrapped in a person's capacity to apply his intellect to matter and ideas to look ahead, to plan and steward the use of that possession. And this is something that most free market would allow. And of course, if we look at it, freedom to use the income we earn, the property we possess, and our time and effort to focus on abstract and spiritual pursuits is a moral advantage of the free market system. The next one is promoting personal integrity and truth-telling. This is another advantage of the free market system. It's, of course, not surprising that free markets tend to produce truth-telling. Just consider yourself. Pumunta ka sa palengke. Kung sinabi sa iyo noong tindera, sariwa po, bilo ka ng sariwa, sariwang isda. Pag ako bumili sa palengke at sinabi sa akin sariwa, maniniwala ako. Pero pagdating ko sa bahay, sasabihin ng asawa ko, bakit mapula ang mata niyan? At mabaho ang amoy. Hindi ka ba marunong tumingin ng sariwang isda? Ang sagot ko, hindi. Kasi akala ko, totoo yung sinabi sa akin ng tindera. And of course, truth-telling is very important in a free market. And this is one of the moral advantages. Dahil we know that those kind of businesses that won't tell you the truth, hindi mo na babalikan. They won't patronize. You won't patronize those kind of business. Dahil they told you a lie. And by the very nature of free market, there would be these repeated voluntary exchanges. Truthfulness is reinforced. Kasi nga, hindi mo nababalikan yung madaya na mekaniko. Pag may mga mekaniko, kaya nga nagtatanong ako kay Brother Ike, Brother, saan ba ako pwede magpagawa ng air condition? Kasi nga, si Brother Ike, marami siyang alam. Saka napapagkatiwalaan daw niya. Talagang sasabihin pa niya sa akin yung mga ginawa. And na-refer ka, and you do the same thing. And he verified to me nung nagpagawa ko ng aircon. And I'm quite satisfied. And we know that lying would destroy trade. Yan ang makakasira talaga sa ating trade. And the overwhelming levels of corruption seen in non-free market economies throughout the world compare unfavorably with the greater honesty of free market, private property economies where repeated exchanges takes place. Ito yung sinasabi natin, no? Dahil paulit-ulit yan, ang kaso nga, there's this corruption. Now, Just to give you some information, itong Index of Economic Freedom. The 2024 index, which consider economic policies and condition in about 184 sovereign countries, from July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023, so very recent pa lang yan, reveals a world economy that, taken as a whole, is mostly unfree. Yung heritage organization, sila po naggagawa po niyan survey na yan. Considered mostly unfree, ang score po noon, tandaan nyo po yung score na 50 to 59.9 kasi pag tinignan po natin ng Philippines, malaman po natin kung anong score natin. Mostly unfree, may ganito pong score, and 33, including China and Iran. You probably would be surprised. Bakit ang China? And China seems to be a capitalist. Yun yung ibang pong form of capitalism where it's government-run, government-dictated. So in terms of economic freedom, they are not really that free. And ito nga sinasabi, they're even economically repressed. Continuing with that information, Singapore has maintained its status as the world's freest economy. Lagi siya nasa top 10. Tinignan ko yung history nitong Index of Economic Freedom. Nasa top lagi ang Singapore. And it's because of its high level of economic resilience. Ang sumunod po is Switzerland, world's second freest economy, followed by Ireland. And fourth po, surprisingly, accordingly, Taiwan, which has moved up to the fourth slot, the highest rank the country has ever achieved in the Index of Economic Freedom. And probably kaya baka mawala yan pag merong ginawa ang kanyang kapitbahay. Previously, New Zealand, Australia, nasa top level sila, but they lost it. So with Australia. The lowest in rank, Burundi, Zimbabwe, Sudan, Venezuela, Cuba, and talaga nasa dulo po, North Korea. Philippines rank 88 out of 184 countries, hindi pala 176. And score is 59. Naalala nyo po yung score kanina. Ito po yung mostly unfree. Kaya ganun po ang ating category. Mostly unfree. And we're number 18 in the region. Indonesia right now is number 1 in our region, I think. Or Taiwan, of course, pero doon sa Southeast Asia, Indonesia. But we were number 66 in 2022. Ang score natin, 61.1. So, ibig sabihin, ngayon 2024, bumaba pa. Malungkot po, no? So, of course, I could not give you much details, but I have the details of this for the Philippines. And, of course, problema pa rin natin talaga ang corruption, no? Which, of course, is one of the curses of poverty. Now, the next moral advantage of this free market is promoting accountability. So, exchanges that people desire, anong gusto nila, they would benefit from the voluntary exchanges. Pag nagpunta ka sa market, dahil may voluntary exchange, you do that again, you repeat that because yung accountability is a norm. It's a standard. Pag hindi accountable, if the merchants would not be accountable, the traders will not be accountable, you won't patronize them. So a free market promotes this kind of moral advantage because in the absence of free markets or property rights, accordingly, it encourages dishonesty, thievery, and the use of heavy hand of the government. In fact, there are governments where they have this so-called legalized thievery. And ano ibig sabihin nun? It's confiscating properties of people, whether rich, especially the rich, and giving it out in the guise of making sure that the poor people gets benefits from the wealth of rich people. This is legalized thievery daw. And of course, this is happening even in the United States where there seems to be this policy that are looking to tax the billionaires. Kasi daw, masyado daw mayaman yung mga billionaires. Buti na lang, hindi ko alam kung may mga billionaires dito sa paligid natin. Baka kayo mataksan if there would be change in this kind of norm in the country. But of course, there could be such kind of policy. Now, in the absence of free market, just like what I've said, it encourages this kind of immoral practices, dishonesty, thievery, and the use of heavy hand of the government, which is coercive. The next one, the next moral advantage of this free market is it promotes earned success. Now, the primary economic factor in making people happy accordingly, and I don't know if you would agree with it, it's not money, but earned success. Would you agree with that? Or you would want money na lang, wag na yung success. But of course, we know that if we don't get any fulfillment in our work, in our task, or if our work does not dignify us, we don't get any satisfaction. Try to think of the work that you're doing. Of course, I used to tell my wife, ang hirap na nagtatrabaho sa gobyerno dahil ang baba ng sweldo sa gobyerno, except maybe just a few years nung nagtaas na ng sweldo sa UP, medyo nagbago na ang takbo sa gobyerno. But of course, the question that I always ask myself is, am I fulfilled with the work that I'm doing? And of course, I would have to say, despite all the stresses, gagalit ang asawa ko pag may stress, it's fulfilling. And of course, we can see, siguro pinakamatandang nagtatrabaho dito sa atin is si Brother Rex, na nag-retire na emeritus pa rin, ayaw tumigil. And ask him, do you have success? Of course, wag na yung success, but are you fulfilled in your work? Definitely, I'm sure that the resounding affirmative yes ang isasagot po niya sa atin. Dahil if you're not fulfilled with your work, it's not worth doing it. But free market would be one that would provide us this kind of environment where earning success or having a job well done is something that you would want to have instead of just following quotas in a factory, say in North Korea or in another communist setup. And the Bible teaches us about the responsibility of human beings to work and be productive. Starting at the Garden of Eden, Adam was given that task to work it and keep it. And in fact, we have heard even so many messages, even pastor telling us that we have to work even after we have our glorified bodies. When there's the new heaven and the new earth, there's still work to do. And I remember Pastor Noel saying, it's not a 24/7 worship service. There would be work that needs to be done. And I don't know what kind of skills or competence we would be exercising, but I was thinking if of course, in our task, even Brother Glenn and the other agriculturists and foresters here, Brother Ike, no? May trabaho pa rin kami kasi siguro may agriculture pa rin, may forest, ano? I was thinking of the medical doctors kasi sabi sa Bible, wala na raw may sakit. Sino gagamutin ng mga doktor, no? But of course, there's this work needs to be done. It was an earlier command to us. Even in Ecclesiastes, it has admonished us to find enjoyment in our work. Kasi if you don't enjoy your work, parang pag I always tell my students, if you would be a forester and then you would be going to your task every Monday morning and you'll be saying, I'll be doing this work again. it's not a fulfilling work for me. And I would say, better not take forestry if you don't like it, of course. I might be offended by the others. I'm talking with the other profession. But it's the same thing. It's if you're not happy with your career, what's the point of waking up on a Monday morning and you would say, I don't enjoy this work. And in Colossians, the Apostle Paul was admonishing us to work heartily as for the Lord. So this kind of admonitions in the Bible is very clear to us. And the society that provides greater opportunities to achieve such a sense of earned success has a moral advantage. And that is, of course, the free market. Now, moving on to the next moral advantage, moderating selfishness and greed and using them for good. They're saying that, well, free market capitalism is a very selfish economic model. If you don't have greed, if you're not selfish, you will not just survive in your trade. But of course, that's the flaws, that's the defect of this word. But there's still a but. We have to think that earning money is not the sole purpose of many people. In fact, you have to survey, even an atheist would say at some point in time that it's not just money that they're really working for, but they want to help other people. In fact, free market exercise a moderating force on greed, at least in many successful people, if not everyone. Talk with a successful businessman, those who may have even the common grace, and they would tell you that they're exercising their trade, their company is doing good to other people. And it's because there's this free market that they live upon. And successful business people are often those who have become habitually accustomed to recognizing and meeting the needs and desires of others. Well, a business will not succeed if they don't consider their customers, the needs of other people. And that is something that we have to see that free market is providing as an atmosphere or environment. Of course, there will still be these people who would still be selfish and greedy, but I'm not saying that they are more of the exception. I couldn't say half or whatever, but they still exist. But at least in the free market, this is what it provides. Someone's initial short-sighted selfishness can be modified over time to long-term enlightened self-interest, and thus it turned to beneficial ends for society. You can think of different kinds of companies who initially might be selfish, but in the long run, those who thrive, yung mga makita natin na mga 100 years na mga company, is of course looking at the how they are contributing to the good of other people. And some don't think of money, but be of service. Can you think of the free smartphone apps? Bakit libre? Ano yun? Wala siyang magawa. Siguro wala siyang magawa. But of course, they just want to help. Of course, yung iba, may sasabihin meron niyang may hidden cost yan, may kailangan kang bilhing upgrade. But in most cases, look at the games of these young people. They're just for free. Diba, libre yung mga games na marami. You don't pay for it. Nga lang, maraming ads. And you can find this kind of people around us that they're not just selfish. They just want to be of service. Think of maybe some inventors that we have throughout the millennia, or not millennia, but thousands of years that we have, or just a few hundred of years. Itong mga inventors na to, given the opportunity really to exercise their talents, they just want to help. Otherwise, we won't have the comforts that we're having right now. Think of maybe, I forgot to check who invented air condition, but if there's been no air condition at this point in time, it's 33 degrees outside accordingly, and that's terribly hot. And of course, we can see the other heat index in many parts of the country increasing. So, moderating selfishness and greed and using them for good is another moral advantage of free market. Likewise, free market promotes the wise use of environment. This would be discussed more in another lesson, but a combination of free market plus private ownership of most lands and resources and public ownership of some designated national and state parks, protected areas, as the case in the Philippines, seems best suited to the preservation of resources and wise use of environment. Of course, I was thinking of our ministry, the KSN, and of course, we want the wise use of environment, and this could flourish only in a free market system, not in other kinds of system. In fact, there's been information that in most cases, socialist countries have more devastated environment than those with free market. Productive society must protect the environment from destruction. Otherwise, it will no longer be productive. I think we have heard Brother Rex talking about having tying up our economic development with a healthy environment, and definitely we have to realize that kind of truth and as a moral advantage of free markets. Likewise, government must also protect people's ability to use the earth's resources wisely. And this is, of course, important when it comes to government policies, because if the government will not promote this kind of policy, then we won't have resources to use for our production. Okay, next. Moral advantage, curbing materialism and promoting personal charity. We hear progressive groups, the leftists particularly, criticizing free market economies as materialistic. Kaya nga ibagsak daw yung mga kapitalista because ginagamit lang daw nila ang mga uring manggagawa upang sila ay maging alipin at kanilang pagsamantalahan para sa kanilang mga pangsariling pakinabang. Okay, hindi po ako nanghahamon para po tayo magrevolusyon, but this is the criticism being thrown by progressive groups. But who is really materialistic? Which economies voluntarily support hundreds of thousands of organizations and people that clothe the naked and feed the hungry? Take the case of our missionary to Thailand. I don't think Sister Jenny is being paid for her English class. But we can think of other organizations doing that. But of course, we know that this could happen only in the environment of a free market. And of course, we know of other NGOs, organizations that, of course, does voluntary work helping people. And this happens whenever there's this free market environment. We could just look at the affluent nations that we have, and they are the ones who are always sending assistance, aids to countries affected by disasters, affected by even wars, because they have the means. And that's one of the ways by which free market promotes personal charity. Capitalism honors and promotes charity and virtue, because true charity cannot be compelled. And of course, the true capitalism that's described here is one that is, of course, charitable. On the other hand, socialism discourages, and by excessive government confiscation of people's money, makes more difficult any individual contribution to charitable causes. Eh, pare-pareho naman tayo dito na nagtatrabaho lang sa factory, eh di bakit pa ako tutulong sa'yo? That's probably pare-pareho ang ating uniform, pare-pareho tayo may bisikleta. So there's no point of being charitable. And socialism is not only materialistic, because they're the ones who are emphasizing production, quota. In fact, or you could even say that what does the socialist agenda have? They just want to distribute the wealth. Sabihin nila, masyadong yumayaman yung mga yan, so bawasan natin. We have to reduce their wealth. In fact, it also is detrimental to moral influence. Think of countries plagued now with socialism, or even countries sort of veering to the socialist agenda. They have people who are just going out to the streets and keep complaining that they are not receiving what is due to them. That the government promised this welfare, but they don't have it. And of course, the government, even though it doesn't have the means, would continue borrowing, even having a deficit, a big deficit in their budget, because they want to satisfy these whining, protesting radical socialists. Okay, the next advantage, meeting the needs of others. Many scholars, and there are lots of books cited by our reference, remind us that the competitive free market was the first social system in human history to direct man's desire toward peacefully applying quantities of goods and services to his fellow human beings. Free market po yun. Sila ang nagdadala, sila ang nagbibigay ng mga pangangailangan ng maraming tao sa mundo. And most of the mention that the working class that was mentioned are the working class, the poor, who are the chief beneficiaries. In fact, we see this generation after generation, the poor takes advantage of opportunities available in a free market to rise up out of poverty. Of course, we see this in the history of many other countries, although now we see this going on the reverse. But definitely still, the competitive free market helps the needs of other people. Now, prioritizing the wants of others. Of course, this could be very contentious. Most companies are responsive to the consumer because they recognize that in terms of determining sales of products, the consumer reigns. You know the adage, the consumer is always right. And the idea there, of course, is if you don't consider the wants, let's say the wants of your consumers, then your consumer would leave you. Of course, there would be competition. Kaya nga, you can just try to think of competition. We can see, for example, here in campus, or not in campus, or even in many towns, ang dami nagtitinda ng inihaw na manok. But what is the best inihaw na manok? Or you can think of other products, the toothpaste. Why would you buy that kind of toothpaste? Why do you want that? Maybe if you want to go a little higher, why do you want that kind of cell phone? What does it give you? Of course, we're looking at the wants of the consumers. And competition prompts a company to improve everything it can satisfy a customer. Right? But the logic of competition in the market is not destroying enemies. Kasi yung iba sabihin, yung sisiraan niya, yung kanyang kakompetensya. Well, of course, we see this in politics, but maybe even in other products. But the idea actually is serving consumers better than your competitors. Which provides a better service? Which provides a better product? Anong mas masarap na buko pie? Original, Sheila's, or Letty's? Anong mas masarap? It's really, there's this competition. Yun nga pala, ang mas maganda example dito sa Los Baños, buko pie. You can see, I don't know, 20, 30 brands of buko pie here in Los Baños. And sometimes I hear in YouTube that there would be this YouTuber who would say, the best buko pie daw ay nahandoon. Eh, hindi naman sinabing Los Baños. But I don't know, baka nga may mas masarap na buko pie than Los Baños. But producers, or rather these companies, have to outcompete the competitors by providing better service or better products. The alternative to serving other people's wants through voluntary exchange is to try to control their lives through the use of force by the government, invariably producing lower living standards and the subjugation of many by the privileged few. So, gusto ba natin yon? That it's by coercion. But of course, what we want is these voluntary exchanges. Okay, the next advantage would be treating others humanly. British economist Arthur Schoenfeld cited this. It's a plain historical fact that the treatment of man by man become conspicuously more humane side by side with the rise of capitalism. I don't have to go over this one by one, but before, accordingly, cruelty was a commonplace. Execution was a spectator sport. We see that in the gladiators. Mutilation, a routine punishment. Human sacrifice, a futile tragedy. And animal torture, a popular entertainment. But that did change when there was this industrial capitalism. Even slavery, child labor, pastimes like, I don't know what this fox tossing was all about, and cockfighting became unacceptable. Although cockfighting is a major pastime in the Philippines, no wonder there are these missing sabongeros. Racism, sexism, and child molestation becomes unacceptable. But of course, there are still this happening. But that of course changed because of the free market, especially where we have this smartphones, where social media has found itself providing the news, so that racism, sexism, and child molestation is something that you have to be very careful with. Dahil meron ng ganito mga produkto. And this changed because there's this free market. So the morality and justice of free market system cannot be fully appreciated if we don't compare it with the other alternatives. Compare it maybe with a socialist or communist country, and you'll see really the difference, that we are really treating man as they ought to be treated. Next one is truly helping the poor. As free market systems are economically the most productive, they are also the systems that bring the most genuine long-term help to the poor. Sila ang mas nakakatulong. Other economic systems, meron silang short-term welfare program for the poor, but the best kind of help is not welfare. There are discussions on this. Of course, we help people in times of emergency, special needs. But if welfare would be prolonged, then that's not acceptable. But what they need really are lasting, productive jobs in which the poor can support themselves and begin to advance out of poverty. So you probably know also the adage, don't just give a poor man the fish, but teach him how to fish. And this ought to be what should be cultivated, so that we could get out of poverty. But that's, again, one of the moral advantages of free market. Whenever the barriers to the exercise of personal choice are removed and economic freedoms are granted, prosperity begins to occur. And when more goods are produced and more jobs are available, people at every level from society, from rich to poor, are helped. Natutulungan po sila. It's also important to note that very few people go hungry under such a system. I'm impressed to see that, say for example, in the US, ituturo ng wife ko, yan yung homeless. And tapos sasabihin niya, yung homeless daw na yan, ay may kotse pa. May kotse. Oo, yun, oh, kita mo yun sa tabi niya. Kotse pa niya yun. Tapos naka-rubber shoes at meron pa siyang relo. Sabi ko, homeless? Oo, homeless yan. Yan yung mahirap dito. But of course, I'm not just trying to sound ridiculous with that, but something that impresses me in the United States, even this homeless in the US never go hungry because there are many, many food banks around the US. Food banks where they could really get free food. Talagang free food. Cooked or even uncooked. And you'll just be surprised at how they help these people. And they don't go really hungry. But of course, in many other countries not espousing this kind of system, and of course, a very flawed free market system, they're still poor. We're into the next kind of moral advantage, and that's promoting lesser virtues. May lesser virtues that is promoted in the free market. That is punctuality, courtesy, tidiness, and a job well done. There's been this extensive study on progress-prone cultures, mataas ang kanilang economic development, and progress-resistant cultures. And it shows that yung productive, progressive-prone cultures tend to place a higher value on what they call lesser virtues. Yung job well done, tidiness, courtesy, punctuality. This, of course, will not be greater virtues than yung those who do not murder, those who do not commit adultery, or those. But try to think of a worker in that you may hire, carpintero. If your carpenter does a job well in your house, and after doing his task would clean up after himself, and is very courteous, hindi yung maangal, and is very punctual. Pag sinabi niyang ang pasok niya alas 7, at alam mo aalis siya alas 4 to complete the 8 hours, at hindi madaya sa oras, then you know that these are the kind of workers that you will hire again. And in a free market system, this lesser virtues is promoted. Otherwise, those kind of workers or even those kind of products will not be patronized. And think of the progressive countries, how tidy they would have, or how clean their environment would be, how punctual they would be, even courteous, lalo yung courtesy, no? What I'm surprised, even when I'm in the US, somebody, if she crosses you in the supermarket, they would say, "Excuse me," or "Sorry." Dito sa Pilipinas, haharangan ka pa doon sa binibili mo. Tapos walang sabi-sabi. And of course, we can see this in the road. This courtesy. Okay, this makes perfect sense once we understand that free market depend on voluntary exchanges. Because we do exchange product. I'll buy your product if or your service if you give me a job well done. If you give me a car that's clean after you repair it. I see this in many some car repair shops. Ika-car wash pa yung kotse mo after servicing. Pero yung iba, yung lumang mga mekaniko, puro grasa yung manibela mo pagkatapos ng pagpapagawa mo. And bakit ba ang dumi nito? Of course, it's up to you if you will go back again to that service. Or if they're not courteous, you don't go back. But the free market supports that. It looks minor, but they reflect the way we would want others to treat us. So we want others to treat us with courteousness. We want others to do a good job for us. And this is the essence of the golden rule, that whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. And accordingly, according to the Gospel of Matthew, this is the law and the prophets. And of course, we want this kind of service as well to us whenever we look at products and services. So free market tend to reinforce general habits of respect for the convictions and preferences of others. And of course, just like what I've told you, there are 21 items, and I cannot extend anymore. So let's go now to the comments and questions. You may have some reactions that you would want to share, or something that you think you would want to object to regarding the moral advantage of the free market. Of course, there are those that I haven't discussed, so I'll just tell you if it's for next discussion. But it's just the societal advantage and also the moral objections. But based on that, the discussions. Okay, Brother Ferdy, please.
Thank you, Deacon Ike. Kung maalala nyo lang po yung bago tong book na to, yung isang libro ni Grudem na I think Politics According to the Bible. Hindi po ako nagkakamali lang, ay yung nabasa ko doon ay nabanggit niya yung Philippines na isa sa parang pinakamahigpit, strict na magbigay ng mga I think business permit. So, ang aking pong tanong ay, ito idea nyo lang kung ano yung personal nyo sa kasulukuyang sinusulong na charter change ngayon sa ating boat houses na at least doon lang naman sa economic provision. So, ano yung masasabi nyo? Walang politika dito.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you for asking that, because that was the first question I was expecting. Chacha. Ay ko, sigurado may magtatanong dito ng chacha. Of course, looking at what they want to change, it's economic provisions daw, no? And of course, it's making more business accordingly. That's the goal. Of course, if we look at free market as being espoused here, what can lift us out of poverty is really having a higher GDP. Yun yung previous discussions nga natin, because a higher GDP means a more prosperous country. But of course, and this would be one of the discussions later, the inequality would exist. Okay, meron kasi later i-mention dito yung Gini coefficient, Gini coefficient, but it's a measure of inequality in the Philippines, or rather in a country. And this is one of the indicators of poverty, yung Gini coefficient. And this is one of the low points that we have. But looking at yung pagbabago na, sabihin papasok ang mga foreign countries, say in, what was that, communication, education, what else? Power, no? Tatlo lang ba? Parang meron pa yata, no? Parang apat, or baka tatlo nga lang. Would that be good? Of course, if you would just think, oh, pag mas maraming trabaho, that would be an advantage. If there would be more products and services, it would be more advantage, because definitely there would be competition. And pag-usapan dyan is, would it kill the other businesses? But just like what we're talking, in a free market, competition is a reality. And would there be a fair competition? So that's a question. Would there be a fair competition? And actually, sa akin, ang gusto ko lang sabihin sa'yo in short, ay napakarami ng gusto kong itanong na requirements para kung yung charter change na yon ay magiging mabisa. And in fact, it's related to the many moral issues and even yung susunod pa nating lesson about the government that we have when it comes to the free market. And even in terms of the freedom, just looking at the freedom that we have, yung index of economic freedom natin, and if I could go back, pwede ko yata ipakita, no? Yan yung economic freedom natin, no? Pwede palang i-display siya. And when it comes to government size, tax burden, ang taas, rule of law, look at the rule of law. Judicial effectiveness, government integrity, we're quite low on that. So ang gusto ko lang sabihin dyan, no? It's not only making that charter change that would lift us out of poverty. Maraming kaakibat, there are many other elements that need to be changed for it to be effective. The goal could be probably clear, but if we don't correct the many wrongs that we have right now, like this, the rule of law, government size, even looking at regulatory efficiency. Look at this is Philippines, by the way, no? The Philippine regulatory environment is relatively well institutionalized, but lacks efficiency. The country's business freedom score is above the world average, quite good. Its labor freedom score is above the world average, daming magagaling na magtrabaho. And its monetary freedom is below the world average. So that's an example. So what am I saying? Or let's look at the next other information about ito yung ating score doon sa economic freedom. Kita mo yung taas baba, no? We were quite high about 2016, 17 bumaba ngayon, no? But that's economic freedom. So what I'm trying to say is there are many other things that we need to correct that should come with it, and it's not just simply doing the charter change. Of course, you might have your views on that. Others may have their opinion on what to do with our charter or our constitution. But of course, other countries have liberalized their economies to allow much foreign investors. But they have the other components of governance, and their institutions could implement the right policies and are doing the right policies already. But in our case, there needs to be a lot of things that needs to be corrected so that the goal, malinaw naman yung goal di ba sinasabi nila para mas maging progresibo tayo, is clear. But the other elements seems to be lacking from my point of view. And even though we may open it up, yeah, there could be really work coming in, more products, services, but I don't think it will completely alleviate poverty in the Philippines if the other infirmities in our institutions, government will not be corrected. Of course, others may cite their comments about Chacha, which would be very controversial. But yun lang, kulang, kung yun lang, kulang. Yun ang aking mabilis na sagot. Hindi sapat. Yes, Sister Jean. Not on Chacha.
Not on
Tango
Chacha.
daw, tango. Ayaw yan ng Chacha.
Now, on the framework that you showed earlier, the middle yung the free market and then the moral virtue, values,
yes,
government and freedom. I'm just curious whether the authors talk about the advance of God's kingdom or the Great Commission. They did at one part of the book ever associate a free market system with the advance of the gospel or the advance of the kingdom. I'm just curious about it. That's the first question. And then yung second question is more on the cultural dimension. I was thinking, why would it be Singapore and why would it be Taiwan? Could it be because of their being industrious? There's the cultural dimension to it. We know that the Chinese are very industrious. I was thinking that maybe there's some association made between yung pagiging most free economy and the culture. Thank you.
Okay. Yung una about mentioning about promoting the kingdom of God, no? In fact, when we reach yung values, even freedom, and even itong sa moral virtues, no? It's not just citing biblical verses, but in fact, the theologian, I know it's the theologian Wayne Grudem, was really emphasizing about the importance really of the Christian worldview when it comes to the free market system. He would explain later that the Christian values are very important and very necessary to pursue the real free market system. And therefore, without really being very evangelistic, if I would use that term, in their book, they are really espousing for the Christian perspective, the Christian value as very foundational for the practice of free market system, because they know that this flourished, or this was conceived and continued to flourish under the free market system. In fact, there's even that, if I could remember correctly, what I've read in advance, those countries having issues about family, particularly having issues about divorce and disintegration of the family, are seeing problems when it comes to the free market system. And they see that the breakdown of the family is one of those causes why the erosion of, there's this erosion of the social values, which later is reflected in the kind of economic system that is veering away from the, let's label as the good free market system. So in a way, the Christian worldview is upheld in the book. In fact, that's the perspective that I think they're really espousing, how it blends with economy. The other question was why, or you have a follow-up, maybe follow-up would be better instead of tackling the other cultural issue.
Association and culture. But my question is, the tendency for rich countries, halimbawa Singapore, I'm not judging Singapore, but I was just thinking the complacency that attaches with a free economy. You know, when everything is flourishing, the urgency to evangelize, the urgency to think about kingdom concerns. I was thinking maybe without judging this free market economy countries, baka lang po. Kaya parang I'm interested to see some data na associating free market economies and advance of yung Great Commission, the advance of God's kingdom. Parang maybe there should be some studies on that somewhere out there.
Okay, well, I was thinking that many of the missionary sending countries, if you look at history, although I don't have the data now, we can think of Great Britain, even the US. It was when they have this, when their economy was very good, that they are able really to send missionaries. So I don't have really data, but I think they are able to send out more missionaries. Well, of course, going out of their country, although their own Christianity is really suffering, say particularly in the U.S. and maybe even in the U.K. There's degradation, or rather decline of Christian worldview, And this is something that many theologians now are complaining, because what they think is that with all the progress that all these countries are having, they're moving away from God. And I think I would say that that is a way by which the evil one could drive away people. We don't have to go very far. Think of even our own selves. There could be these temptations that we could be tempted that whenever we feel good, we have lots of money in the bank. Bakit ba ako maglilingkod pa? Bakit ba ako mananalangin pa? We could personalize it. And I think it's a good research to be made that how does that correlate? And I think we could see that in rich countries now, there's definitely a decline in how they value Christian worldview. Just take the case of the U.S. It's very heated now that abortion is a health care instead of it being labeled as a murder of the unborn. And they said that it's my reproductive right, and they have all kinds of reasoning because they just feel so rich, and they could do anything that they want. I'm not really familiar with the culture in Singapore or in Taiwan, but I think there's definitely affluence that's taking place in those countries. And of course, I'm not sure how much they have in terms of their Christian belief, but I would think that it could be a way of the evil one to keep the people away from God, because why would I need God when I have all the prosperity around me? May dagdag pa daw.
My question is less on the advance of God's kingdom, but
Okay.
but more on the cultural
Culture.
dimension of the free market system. I'm curious why Singapore, why Taiwan. So I was just giving my own sense making an explanation that possibly it's a cultural dimension. They are very industrious. Alam natin yung mga Chinese culture. Talagang masipag po sila. So I was thinking na possibly that is related to that as well.
It's in the values, and it's in the values. I think that would be part of the values discussion, yung culture, because there are differences, of course. We can think, say, of the simple ones, yung punctuality. Of course, you know how we abuse punctuality here in the Philippines, or even in other countries that we have that kind of practice. No? And we can see the effects. You can think of Japan. I think you just came from Japan, and how punctual they are, the bullet trains or the trains itself, when they say it's this time, and they just don't waste any time in there. Sige, Brother Glenn, sige, medyo alas 12 na pala, no? So, pero anyway.
Last na lang to.
Sige, last na to. Baka may humao. Sige, baka may humao.
Humawol pa si Chin.
Sige, bro.
I'm just looking at the freedom and other dimension lang. I find Philippines or these other countries, Thailand, Vietnam, I traveled a lot. There's more freedom there than in Singapore than in Taiwan. Kasi sabi ko nga, usap nga kami ni Tom dito, may 20 pesos ka lang sa Pilipinas, makakasakay ka ng jeep, makagala, makahingi ka ng barbecue, makapunta ka sa kapitbahay mo. If you're in US, if you're in Singapore, if you're in Canada, parang ang hirap gumalaw, ay talagang magmumukmuk ka na lang dun sa you have no freedom. Kahit sending missionary, you could evangelize. Sobrang sa atin, ang ingay-ingay dun sa nagsisigawan yung mga religious organization, freedom of assembly, freedom to speak against the government, freedom to speak against your boss. May freedom ka dito eh. Yun ang nakikita kong freedom on other dimension. People are coming here to retire because they have more freedom. They could get help any place. You could, yung pera mong kaunti na retirement somewhere, dito luxurious ka na sa Philippines. Yun ang the other dimension naman. Of course, corruption is there, but the culture also, yung family ay mas sa akin mas free akong nandito kaysa kahit siguro I'm just looking at the other aspect.
Economic freedom naman yung bro. So,
Economic freedom ba?
with the other freedoms, I think we're quite free. Although may mga nagre-red tag, may mga nagko-complain pa rin. Ano? Although I think that could be another Sunday school lesson that we can talk about. So, sige po, hindi natin pwedeng pahindihan si Ate Te. Sige po, alam kong
Hindi kasi
meron po kayong comment or
this is a sequel noong question din na gusto ring masagot ni Jean at saka ni Deacon Glenn. As a church, ano ang magagawa ng church sa mga kabataan para ma-prepare sila to penetrate into the free market system at doon nila ibahagi ang kanilang pagiging Kristiyano na sinasabi sa Biblia na napakaraming upang ang kanilang foundation ay maging mas matibay pa. Yun lang.
okay. So, may sasagot ba ng kabataan? Ang mabilis ko lang po sigurong sagot doon ay, of course, we're fortunate that our young people are being taught here in church, not only theology, but of course, lalo po yung ethics, which of course is a very, very important component or elements whenever they would go to an enterprising business. Of course, kung iisipin po natin, ang sabi nila, and I could be wrong, ang mga Pilipino daw, whenever we think of our children, we want them just to be employees instead of being entrepreneurs. Yun daw ang iniisip. Anak, mag-aral ka, pag nakatapos ka, makakawala tayo sa kahirapan. But in other countries, they have and I don't know if it's a culture also in Singapore and Taiwan, na very entrepreneurial sila, no? And that kind of enterprising culture, if I would call it an enterprising culture, could help them. Pero I think maganda po yung sinabi niyo po, Ate Ten, with us here in church, pagsamahin po natin yung ethical integrity of our young people who would be in the future the leaders, and providing them with entrepreneurial competence. Palagay ko po ito yung magandang paghaluin dahil yun po yung kailangan. Tulad nga na sinabi natin kanina, yung a good business, babalikan at babalikan po yun because okay po yung produkto. Pag nangako kayong quality, talagang quality. So I think yun po lang yung naiisip ko. Combine, nandito po yung combination, pero siguro baka sa brotherhood natin pag-usapan how to be an entrepreneur, Brian. O kaya si Brother Glenn, may mga negosyo yan, o si Brother Deacon Ike, maibahagi sa atin. You can talk about that and how we can marry ethics and entrepreneurial competence. So with that, medyo we have to end this lesson. And let's come to God in prayer. We thank you, dear Father, for this time that you have provided to us, enlightening us about poverty, although there's still so much to discuss. But you know that you want us to help the poor, and at the same time, not to be too materialistic, not really just thinking of filling our pockets with money and just seeing our countries being prosperous, but of course forgetting you. For we know that you value more how we value your kingdom. And this is something that we know that would guide us whenever we address this issue of poverty, that you would want us not to just consider the things of this world although you would want us to help people in this world, just like the Apostle Paul, that he would want to be of help, service to the Gentiles. Like us, we want to be of help to the people in the manner, in the way, in the environment that you have provided to us in the people that we meet and interact with. And so, dear Father, as we would continue looking at this issue of poverty and how a sustainable solution could come, we pray that we would not forget that there are still the true riches that we can find in heaven, and that the riches that we are using and probably even enjoying in this world is just temporary. And we know that we need to use these riches only for the advancement of your kingdom and for the glory of your name. For this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.